We hear it everywhere, the myth of the absent black father. It shows up in political speeches, news headlines, even in how society decides who deserves support and who doesn't. But when you look at the data, a major CDC study shows that black fathers who live with their kids are more involved in daily caretaking than fathers in any other racial group. Bath time, homework, meals, everyday bonding.
Get the good grades, have fun, because basically I've just felt like my job as a father is to prepare them to have a good childhood. That's all I want my kids to do.
Behind the myth are real men like Al Smith, a single dad, a police officer, a son raised by grandparents, and a father who carries the weight of history with quiet determination.
Everything I've done with my kids has been off an expectation. I'm responsible for their childhood, and I think that, if you think about being a father, my motto is be the father that I didn't have.
Throughout this Truth Be Told podcast, we explore personal stories of racial inequity across the lifespan. In this episode, we'll explore the truth about black fatherhood and hear one man's story of breaking cycles that began long before he was born. So this episode is about fatherhood. Can you share with me just a little bit about the joys of fatherhood? Tell me a little bit about your kids too.
I have a daughter, she's 26, and I have a son who's 14. And they look like twins. You look at them. They're both about 6 foot. My daughter's 6 foot tall. My son is 14, but he's 6'1".
Okay.
And I'm 6'2". So it's like 3 tall people who live in the house. And they all look just alike.
All look alike.
And they all look alike. It's fun being a father to them. For the last 2 weekends, we've been having movie night for Halloween. So that's been pretty fun.
Before we begin, we want to start with a moment that centers the heart of this episode. Fatherhood isn't just a role, it's a relationship, a responsibility, a legacy. It's shaped by history, by community, and by the lessons we carry forward, or choose to leave behind.
Fatherhood by Marcus Emecker. I am a father, a warrior, a protector, a lover, a provider, a teacher, a vessel, a bridge, a creator, a blanket, a shield, a mirror, a guide, a friend, a poet, a man.
The poem points to the truth that fatherhood is built from the pieces we inherit and the pieces we choose to rebuild. For Al, those pieces began with his grandparents and the absence of the parents he never really knew. Before we talk about stereotypes or the weight black fathers carry in this country, we have to begin with childhood, with the home that shapes you, with the people or the absence of people who teach you what family looks like. For Al Smith, that story starts in Niagara Falls, New York, raised by his grandparents from the time he was 1. Not the postcard version of Niagara Falls, not the tourists and rainbows over the water, but the neighborhoods just beyond them. His childhood reflects the story of many black families in the 1980s, navigating structural inequities, the crack epidemic, and a legacy of disrupted family systems rooted in centuries of racist policy. Can you tell me a little bit about where you come from?
Yeah, I grew up in Niagara Falls, New York. Went to Buffalo State College at 17. So once I started school, I kind of stayed in Buffalo pretty much the whole time after that. Niagara Falls is definitely home for me.
What was it like living in Niagara Falls? I mean, because Buffalo and the Falls, 20 minutes apart?
20 minutes apart, but those bridges make a big difference.
Huge difference.
In mentality, I would say, right? So my grandparents raised me, and I had a good upbringing but watching my grandparents have the responsibility, I knew that wasn't theirs. Early on, I started doing things like shoveling snow and raking leaves. When I learned how to get money, I started getting money. And that was early. You know, as a kid, I'm shoveling snow, I'm raking your leaves in your yard, all this at probably 11 and 12.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when you say getting money, it's through hard work and effort.
Oh, yeah.
All right. And I heard you say, you saw them taking care of a responsibility that they didn't have to take care of. So I'm sure for you, there was a certain amount of gratitude and respect with that, right?
Always gratitude to the grandparents.
Mhm.
You know?
Al talks about Niagara Falls the way many people talk about small Rust Belt cities, a place shaped by factories, neighborhoods, the church, and the harsh reality of the 1980s crack epidemic. What did, I guess, family look like in general in the community?
Most of my friends that I hung with, it was half and half. Some had their dads and some didn't. So you had both parents in about 50% of the households. Yeah, so it was mixed. And then you had some of the people pretty much seemed like they parents got hooked on drugs and things of that nature. And then you only had like that one parent around or being raised by grandparents.
Black families across the country were navigating the fallout of policies that treated addiction as crime instead of public health, a punitive shift that devastated communities. In the 1980s, Black parents were disproportionately arrested, incarcerated, and separated from their children due to drug charges and neglect claims. Al saw that firsthand. So you mentioned that some of your friends' parents fell victim to drugs. Is that kind of how you ended up living with your grandparents?
Yeah, for me, for certain. My mother, she was a victim of just that whole epidemic at that time. I don't think people really knew what the crack epidemic was going to do to the users. I think that's why they all used.
Right.
We already had the weed. Oh, what's this high? Well, let's try this. Then, as we know, like that just killed these people, hooked them, and then they were done. Like you know, one hit, and they couldn't get off this stuff.
Right.
You know?
By 1990, his mother was sober, but the mental health toll was long-lasting, and she never regained custody of her son. He never met his father. No stories, no photos, just a blank space where a man should have been. That blank space, that unanswered question, becomes an early thread in Al's adulthood, one he pulls on again and again. What was it like growing up with your grandparents raising you?
Being with your grandparents, especially having wonderful grandparents like mine, it'll cloud your judgment of what your life was really supposed to be. Because if they do an excellent job, you'll always feel like you had parents.
Wow. Al's grandparents stepped in, part of what social workers now call a grand family. Today, 7.8 million U.S. children live in households headed by grandparents or other relatives, with Black children disproportionately represented due to structural inequities and drug criminalization.
And I would say, you're a smart person. I think if any man walked through that door right now, and he told you that he didn't have a father, you'd probably assume that maybe something is missing in his life or something had to be repaired with him. And if we could say the same if he didn't have a mother growing up. But when your grandparents do such a good job like mine did, I grew up through my whole life thinking, oh, well, you know, I'm hitting goals. I'm doing great. However, I'm never acknowledging the piece that I didn't grow up with parents. Oh, that hurts you later. But when you don't have parents, being raised with your grandparents they're not supposed to be your primary caregiver. And caregiving for parenting is based on what the psychologists call responsiveness, right? So responsiveness is how we treat children. So when you're with your grandparents, if you complain, they have a certain level of response that they're going to give you. But remember, they already gave it to their children.
Right.
So how much patience is in this response?
Psychologists talk about how changes in responsiveness shape childhood outcomes. The difference between a grandmother at 55 and a mother at 25 isn't just age. It's energy, bandwidth, emotional reserves. Al grew up learning to entertain himself, drawing, painting, reading.
We were kids of the 80s. So, you know, the children of the 80s, we played chase and rode bikes. No phones, you know, nobody called the police and say, yo, Alan, where are you? That didn't happen. We had a lot of fun. We learned how to do everything. We learned how to fix a flat on a bike, change the tire, you know, fix the brakes on the bike. I mean, you could change your bike was like a car. It made you a mechanic.
Some bikes was put together with scraps from other bikes.
From other bikes. That's right.
This is a paradox of black childhood in the 80s. Freedom and danger, side by side. And through it all, Al's grandparents were steady. In being raised by your grandparents, can you think about any values that they passed along to you?
My grandmother, she was like the leader of our house. My grandmother was like a very strong woman. So she became a born again Christian. And she said, you know what? If y'all in this house, we all going to church.
Right.
So, I may not be wearing a Jesus jacket, but you got to understand that it's been prayer that's gotten me through all my toughest days and through just the regular journey of my life.
Right.
And honestly, if I could give anybody some encouragement or a peace, I would say, yeah, you're going to mess up and make a lot of mistakes, but don't ever put God away. Keep him on your journey.
Was there anything that you learned maybe from your grandfather or picked up just by watching that showed you what it meant to be a father?
Yes. Yeah. So my grandfather, he was a great person. Fred and Dixie Davis, that was their name. Fred was a man from Alabama. He was tall, light-skinned, black man, and he worked hard. That was his MO. You knew that if he was getting up in the morning, he was headed to work.
Right.
And then by the time he came home, the clothes he had on smelled like he was at a plant. A manufacturing job. And he was the kindest man you've ever met in your life. He never raised his voice to me. He never raised his voice to anybody around us. He just went to work, and he was very talented. Because I told my son this yesterday. My grandfather couldn't read. And I didn't learn this till like I got older, that he'd pick up a newspaper and he just kind of skim. And I found out, I was like, wow, you can't read, huh? I said, son, my grandfather couldn't read, but he taught me how to put my hands in a bucket of oil. And then when we reached into that bucket, it would be a wrench or a screwdriver or some other tool there that couldn't be rusted because it was in that oil. He was smart enough to build things around the house, fix things around the house, and church.
Fred taught Al the kinds of skills many men pass to their sons. Changing a flat, fixing a bike, working with your hands. But he also taught him gentleness, a combination that would later shape who Al became as a father. Were there other father figures in the hood that you can remember who you thought like, okay, I could see that. I could see me doing that.
I definitely, there a ton of great men around me. In my job, I've come in contact with a lot of young men and they have nobody. So I can never sit here and tell you that my childhood is as hard as theirs. I would say I'm from a place it's the hood with people who fall in love with Jesus Christ. So they go to church. So I had the hood, and my grandmother, she probably was hell on wheels when she was young, but she went off to serve the Lord, and she did a great job when she fell into that role. Now, when I'm coming along, she's already raised 5 kids, and now she wants to treat me. Okay, these kids may have not done so well. Let me take Alan and put him in church. Right. So I have like all type of influences from between the church and from my neighborhood growing up. I had a ton of great men at my church, a ton. Most of them were married, right? Most of them were outstanding guys. Put it like this, one day I'll live up to who those men were, but I have not yet.
It's important to pause on that because it pushes directly against the Moynihan Report narrative of broken black families. Research shows that during slavery, Reconstruction, Jim Crow, and beyond, black fathers were far more present than mainstream narratives suggest. Many scholars argue that black fathers have long been anchors of resilience, even in the face of repeated systemic attempts to dismantle black family life. Al's church community proved that to him. It sounds like you were really cognizant of, I'm being raised by my grandparents. I want to respect the fact that they're doing this for me. But it sounds like you were really aware of, you were also missing out on some things. So did you feel, I guess, frustration about not being able to do some of the things if you had parents who were younger?
I did have an aunt who was around a lot. So she was young, like a mother figure. So my Aunt Dot, she was the one that kind of kept me related to what a younger mother might be doing. I probably only had one birthday cake in my whole childhood.
Yeah.
And she brought that cake to my house when I was 11 years old.
That small act, one birthday cake, becomes a defining memory, a signal that someone younger was looking out for him. Someone was seeing him. That becomes a quiet seed in Al's future approach to fatherhood, giving his own kids what he didn't have.
A little hip to the game. She might buy you a certain present for Christmas. You know, my grandparents never had a Christmas tree, whole life. No Christmas tree. That's weird to me. My kids have had Christmas trees their whole life. They've never missed a birthday party. I never had the woe is me attitude. I had an older cousin in the house with me. She was 5 years older, and she said, we're poor. Once she said we was poor, I think that trumped everything.
It's funny how many people talk about the day I found out I was poor.
Right, man. Once she said we were poor, I said, who's poor? Poor? What is poor? My grandmother said, poor is no money. I said, oh, no, we about to rock. I'm not about to be him, ever.
By adolescence, Al was juggling school, odd jobs, and the church regimen set by his grandmother. And like many young men from neighborhoods with limited opportunity, he faced a crossroads.
I used the military knowing that it was either going to be college or the military that was going to get me out of poverty.
Right.
And for me, it was the military.
The military was the bridge between the childhood he inherited and the fatherhood he would one day choose. How did you feel when you found out you were first going to be a father?
Okay, so when I first found out I was going to be a father, I was down in Fort Riley, Kansas. I was in the Army. I was married. And one day I come home, my wife looks at me and she says, I have something to tell you. And I'm looking at her. I'm like, what's up? You know? And she was like, I'm pregnant. I think almost anybody who's ever heard this has a millisecond to decide how they're going to respond. What's your feeling? Like you have to ask yourself that question when somebody tells you that they're pregnant, right? My millisecond says happy. That was my response. I was happy, and I told her I was happy. I said, wow, really? She said, yeah. So we began that journey of my daughter, Alexis, at that time. That year was 1999.
That millisecond is a moment of identity when personal history meets a new future, fatherhood. So did you have any fears about becoming a new father?
None at all. None. Because my whole time about growing up in the hood and deciding to go to the military, everything that I had been through, the military at that time had me set. I'm set. I have housing already.
Right.
I'm getting money already. You know, if a baby's coming, no big deal. I have a place.
Stability matters. Studies show men with secure employment and housing show greater early parental involvement. All right. So everything's set. And I mean, that's a great space to be in, becoming a new father, right? What did you think about in terms of being a father for this daughter coming into the world?
I was excited. You know, I grew up with my grandmother and grandfather, so I didn't have a father to, I had a lot of good men like we spoke about, right? A lot of father figures, but I didn't have my own father. So my idea was, man, listen, this is nothing. For mine, I'm going to be here for her. And that's what I've always been for her. I had a cousin who was also with me in Kansas at Fort Riley.
Okay.
We had the same military occupation, same job. He had a connection to Kansas City. When he got out of the military, he got out, he went to Kansas City. Big money. All I had to do was follow his steps and go to Kansas City. However, my ex-wife and I were going through a breakup, so she came back to Buffalo. So I had to make a decision. Do I follow my cousin or do I go raise my daughter? So every time my daughter get on my nerves, I let her know. I could have went to Kansas City, but I came here for you. It's like a joke between us. I knew I needed to come back to Buffalo and take care of that little girl. She was 1 year old when I got out. So I had to be here. I had to be there for her. I needed to
that choice to return home and raise his daughter disrupts the absent father stereotype perpetuated through policy, media, and the legacy of the Moynihan Report. Okay. So by the time she's 1, you and mom have separated.
We separated, yes.
What did you want to do as a father who had to live separately?
Just be involved in her life. For me, it was easy. I've laid a good game plan out from the beginning. The plan was go to the Army, get a job that you can do as a civilian.
Mm-hmm.
I did that. So my plan was just boom, boom. I'm hitting all my goals and everything is going right. I work as a cable guy, climb the poles, install the cables, replace equipment, troubleshoot the problems, get off of work, go straight to pick her up.
Okay.
Take her up to Delaware Park, push her on a swing, drop her back off to her mother. Now I'm doing my father piece for my daughter.
Right.
And then like if it's my weekend to get her, just she comes, stays with me. We didn't really have any big problems. My daughter, she was just raised with her dad her whole life. Yeah. She's always had a space in any home that I've had, always had a room for her to sleep into.
Okay, and that's important right there. So you co-parented well.
Yes. I have 2 nieces as well. So their names are Deja and Joshayla. They're all 3 of them are 1 year apart. So you just put all 3 of them together. You just get your nieces and you got your daughter. They having fun. You being the best father in the world, right?
Right.
You make a big pot of spaghetti or make some chicken Alfredo. Everybody's happy. Order a pizza. Whatever we did on weekends, we just had a good time being able to do that.
Research shows fathers' daily involvement, meals, caregiving, homework help, is highest among Black fathers who live with their children. Okay, so fast forward 12 years, and now deja vu. Right. What's happening in 12 years?
Love child. That's
a good thing. Right? Love is a good thing.
Yeah, love child, because I love him. So I have a son now, and he's 14. His name's Jameer. Raising him was the same way. You know, his mother, she came to me and she says, "Hey, listen, I'm 8 weeks pregnant." And then the next thing you know, she was confused. She says, "Well, how are you gonna treat my son?" I said, "Well, I'm gonna treat him just like Alexis." She says, "Well, you were married to Alexis' mother, so I understand that, but why would you treat him the same as Alexis?" I said, "Because listen, a child of mine is a child of mine. Okay, if I'm gonna be a father to Alexis, I'm gonna have, if that's my son, he's not gonna be treated any different. Period." Right. My son's mother is looking at me like I'm not gonna do it, and she's been proven wrong to the end. You know, right now my son, he's 14. He lives with me. He's getting picked up from school daily. He's, in private school. As a matter of fact, my daughter graduated from private school and went off to a prestigious college in New York City, down in Manhattan, called the New School. She graduated, 4-year degree, literary arts. And my son is now traveling in the same footsteps. He's at that same high school, private school, and he's doing well and excels.
But also, I think there's a bit of leading by example there, right?
Right.
And I want you to brag a little bit, because you mentioned Lexus went off to college, graduated, was successful.
Right.
Son currently is doing well in school,
high school,
right?
Yep,
and playing sports.
Yep.
What do you think are the qualities that you've instilled in them to achieve these measures of success?
I think what comes naturally, and first off, is respect. Right? I'm constantly telling them that we will respect others. We are not to disrespect the neighbors, any parents, any teachers, but that was always from young. And I just think the overall idea, what I've given my kids, that life is hard. When you leave me one day, it's going to be tough. I grew up, I knew it was tough. It just didn't bother me that it was tough. You understand? Yeah, I have the bruises from growing up the way I grew up. However, it didn't hurt me. It just made me tough. Even in my real profession of what I do for work, I anticipate to be under a lot of serious pressure, like life and death situations, because that's what I'm in law enforcement. So that's what my job entails. So my kids, I think that they've seen me not whine, not complain, just prepare them. They've only had 2 jobs growing up, and that's to have fun and get good grades. I think the rest of who they'll become will be their own personalities. Basically, I've just felt like my job as a father is to prepare them to have a good childhood. That's all I want my kids to do. So we can get to the nitty gritty of what it means for me to be a father. That's what I give Jameer. That's the piece. All the other things that come along with it, obviously, I teach him how to do plumbing. I made him cut some 2x4s the other day. Yeah. We had to empty out the garage, just to fill everything back in the garage, get rid of the trash, organize, be prepared for winter, right? Get the snowblower, put the lawnmower to the back, get the last grass cut. So he's learning how to be a man. He's watching that by example, but his true job is to get good grades and have fun. And I look at that as being responsible for childhood. That's what I am as a dad. I'm responsible for their childhood. My motto is be the father that I didn't have. That's my answer to being a father, right? I'm the father that I never had. You know, my son and daughter, they rarely hear the word no from me. You know, and if it is no, if I'm telling my kids no, it's because you can't jump off the house with some sort of parachute that you made out of blankets in the basement.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You know, it's something ridiculous. So I had to tell you no. But other than that, you know, my kids hear yes, you know, and they hear yes often. And my yeses are also with the real understanding that these yeses don't mean that you're going to be some sort of spoiled in society. It's not about being spoiled in society. You're going to get it because I have it. And that's that. I think all this stuff that we're doing as parents is just common sense. I believe in tradition. I really do. I think you give kids a traditional life, what they can see on TV as a traditional life. This will kind of kill a lot of, oh, my dad didn't do this or my dad didn't do that. No, just give them what's the traditional line, you know, which is what? The food, the clothes, the shelters, care about their birthdays, take them out of town, give them a couple family trips. Whoever you invite into their lives, make sure that person cares about them as well, protects them as well. And I think that's just, you know, my focus for my kids, just giving them a traditional American childhood, you know, so they don't grow up feeling like they missed anything. I'm blessed. These two children of mine, my daughter, I'm not going to lie, she has some serious, you talk about praying, right? My grandmother always said that she prayed over me. People say my grandmother's prayers helped me get to where I am. Well, as a father, I did the same thing for my daughter. There was times that things were so bad for us that I just literally told God, like, listen, I can't do anything with this. And one thing I have to do is if you've given me all these receipts, you have to give me this thing about my daughter. You have to save her life. And he did. And then that's a level of success that I will say that I have through my prayer and watching her go through the same motions, because she is a spiritual person right now. She's, you know, giving me scriptures that help me get through a day. She tells me things that motivate me and encourage me. One of the things, I got to tell you this, one of the things she told me was, Dad, don't worry about tomorrow, because the Bible says tomorrow has its own worries. So when you have your own, you've poured into your child enough that they pour that back, then that's definitely a relationship that means something to me. You know,
and it's evidence of that connection all the way back to your grandmother, though.
That's right.
Yeah.
What makes you a good dad? I mean, I do appreciate that you have like your stuff together. You know what I mean? As an adult, as a middle-aged man. And like, it makes me happy to know that at least I have one person I can count on with the tangible things that really do matter.
I do this because it's my responsibility, you know, and as a man, that's what I see for you and your brother. You know, I love you guys, but what trumps the love is that I am your dad, and you can't be out in the world and not be able to have your dad come to your aid.
Al sees the impact of fatherhood every day through the uniform he wears. What happens to young men that don't have fathers or positive male figures in their life?
Oh boy, it's difficult. It's really unfortunate. That's the first piece. Because like we talked about it earlier, you know, what do educated men think about young men who walk through the door without a father? Do we automatically assume that there's something that needs to be fixed inside this child? And the answer for most educated men will be yes. He's dealing with something that, it's no disrespect to his mother, but something is missing from him as a man. You know, something about him is going to show its face of what he's lacked as having a strong man in his life, right? Or so I've watched it through law enforcement. I've seen it in boys. It's just, you know, they grow up to be their own man sometimes, you know, if they don't have somebody to look up to, then maybe you look up to the wrong person. Man, listen, I grew up in the hood around drug dealers and clergymen, pastors, deacons. I've seen pimps. I've seen prostitutes. Been so close to everything. Been so close to the deacon. I've been so close to the pimp. I've been so close to the prostitute. I've been so close to the ushers. I've seen so many dynamics, but when it comes to the boys, right, they'll look up to what impresses them. Okay, that's what I've noticed. So if you don't take your kid to church and you just leave him around the street, the only thing he can look up to is the street. If no other men is doing anything with him, that'll be something that he's going to gravitate to.
And research supports this. Father absence correlates with increased behavioral challenges and vulnerability. So what do you think fathers and positive male figures bring to the lives of children?
Man, you know, the men that were positive in my life helped me on days that I would have been bored out of my mind, right? But they picked me up, took me, like, say, for instance, after church, I had a cousin and he was older. His name's Greg. And Greg had a crucial part of helping me grow up, because around the time I was 14, 15, and 16, if I wasn't at a job working, I could maybe go to church on Sunday, go watch the NBA. You know, the NBA was big at 3:00 on Sundays when we was growing up. So now you watching Jordan.
Right.
Yeah, Jordan's coming on Sunday. Every Sunday.
That's
Jordan,
must-see TV.
That's right. Yeah, that's must-see TV. But being allowed to go to his house instead of my grandparents' house, he was a positive younger male model in my life. So having a positive male in a young boy's life, it just guides. It's guiding him to the right things, you know? And even when I went off, I was thinking about him today. I said, man, Al, you got to give Greg a call, right? Because he was that crucial piece at a time. And maybe that's part of the reason why I never really felt the struggle, right? Because even though I didn't have a father, I still had like a father figure.
Right.
You know?
Similar to the way you talked about your Aunt Dot.
Yeah,
filling
and
in that.
Younger male and younger female.
Yeah, yeah. I think what's interesting is, because I'm like, oh, what is the father and the positive male? And what you're talking about is someone who takes an interest in you that is not expecting much of anything in return. Right. It's just providing you an outlet, spending time, which also connects to some of the other things you're saying about how young men fall into these negative situations, because we have people who think predatorily and will take advantage of that as well and take an interest and start guiding them down the wrong path.
Right. And to speak to that really quickly, I was on a pole one time and I'm doing some technical work with the cable company.
Yep.
And I'm on the pole and I have my hard hat on and I have a safety belt around me and I'm belted off on the pole and I'm working. So a group of young men in kind of a neighborhood that you would suspect might have a little bit of drug activity going on. You're watching this group of guys hang out and they're at the base of the pole. So one of the kids, he looks up at the pole and he says, hey, yo, my man, he says, how did you get that job where you could climb that pole and be up there? How did you get that? And I knew, you know, my thing was the military, right? So I said, well, you know, I got this from being in the military. And I was saying it with the idea that maybe this, what I'm about to tell him, is about to help him. And ironically enough, to speak to what you just said, right, that the wrong influences around young people can take them in the wrong direction. A guy right next to him, clearly older than him, said, man, ain't nobody going to the Army. And that one statement, that kid was at a pivotal place. He was at a fork in the road right there.
So as a police officer, so you see a lot of good and bad every day. And I think earlier you said when a young man comes in and you know that they're not attached to a father figure or a male figure, you almost suspect that something is going on. What's the opposite of that? You know, what's the flip side of that? Like, how do you see young people show up and you say, you know what, I know they got the benefit of strong fatherhood.
Oh yeah.
Parenthood.
Yeah. That's a good question. It's a statement and a question that you're making basically. But the statement piece is, you can tell if a kid has a strong father figure in his life, right? So there's just this level of respect that says, you know, the head's up, the shoulders back. You know, that's what I teach my son. We walk down the street together. Son, hold your head up, stick your chest out. You protrude your chest to walk as a man. I'm showing him. And I see the young men that I come in contact with. I can tell immediately who's been around a man that's given him something. This is just about being a man, right? Stand up for yourself. Stand up as somebody that people can trust in, maybe use, right? You see that lady right there? Do you look like the type of child that's willing to go help? What's your demeanor? Is your demeanor down? And is your demeanor turned off to the fact that, don't ask me for nothing. I don't look like the type of kid that want to help nobody. My kid look like the type of person that says, you know what? Yeah, I hope, miss, you need any help? Do you need a hand? He's already looking like he's willing to help. So, I mean, when you say, what do those children look like? They're different, you know, and it's no knock to any kid. It's actually unfortunate for any kid that doesn't carry that demeanor, that has his head down, and that appears to not have had somebody to care for him.
So, last question. To push these things forward, what advice would you give to a man about to become a father?
Well, I'll say that's two parts for me. First off, if that young man, or whatever age he is, if any man is about to be a dad, if you never had a father, be the father, one, that you never had. To me, that's easy. That's an easy answer. That's who I am. You know, I didn't grow up with a father. I grew up with a wonderful grandfather. He was a wonderful man. He was kind. And remember, he wasn't the smartest man in the room on a book, but his aptitude level was seriously higher than a lot of men. If a man grew up with a father, and my advice for him, if he's about to become a father, would be, it's our responsibility to get these kids off into the world as good citizens. So do that. Do that. Give your kids the opportunity to go off into life, you know, and become good citizens of life, right? Be good friends, obviously, right? Be good humans. Go off into the world and be a good human. And that's what I'm teaching my son to be. Every place that I was neglected as a child, I work on giving those pieces to my son so he doesn't make the same decisions that hurt others the way I did, because I didn't have that advice. What I may have done wrong because I didn't have a father showed out in my adult behavior because I didn't have a father. These things that I see a therapist about because I didn't have a father. I would tell a father, teach your son self-control. If I could give a man some advice, teach him that there are 9 fruits of the spirit. Okay? Tell him to look up all 9, but remember the 9th is self-control. So if I had to give that advice, that would be my advice to a new father. Take care of your kids, man. Make sure they know God, man. Make sure that they know some scriptures that can get them along their journey, because they're going to need it. It's going to be more than bicycles and dials. It's going to be more than good schools and education. It's going to be more than, you know, always saying yes. They need a piece of something that is morally sound and morally connected at a high level. So
spiritual wisdom.
Yeah, some spiritual wisdom. Give them that.
Al's story shows us how cycles are broken, not by chance, but through intention, love, and the people who show up when it matters most. A grandfather's gentleness, a grandmother's faith, a cousin's mentorship, and a father who decides every day to give his children what he never received himself. But his story also reminds us that no parent raises a child alone. Behind every strong father is a network: grandparents, neighbors, church elders, teachers, mentors, people who help carry the weight, fill in the gaps, and guide children toward their future. When those networks fade, or when systems pull fathers away through addiction, incarceration, or lack of support, entire communities feel the impact. And when fathers are present, emotionally, spiritually, physically, families grow stronger. Neighborhoods grow stronger. Our future grows stronger. Supporting Black fathers means confronting the policies and narratives that have tried to diminish them for generations. It means investing in mental health, reentry programs, youth initiatives, and fatherhood circles that rebuild what history tried to fracture. It means recognizing that joy, movie nights, morning drives, the quiet encouragements, is its own form of resilience. This is the work of Truth Be Told, to witness the impact of systems on everyday lives, to honor the people who rise in spite of them, and to imagine what becomes possible when every family is supported, valued, and seen. Thank you, brother.
Yeah, no problem, bro.
In our next episode, we step into retirement and meet Barbara Nevergold, whose life of advocacy reveals how inequity follows us into our later years and how resilience carries us forward. I'm your host, Wil Green. Thanks for listening. Truth Be Told is a production of Buffalo Toronto Public Media and Cruise Control Media in collaboration with Clementine Gold Group LLC and WUFO.